We are now recording. Great. All right. So welcome everyone. If you're just joining us, my name is Tabitha. I am the customer success lead here at That Clean Life. Avita, did you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Evita, and I am the dietitian in residence at That Clean Life, and I'm so excited to share information today about evidence-based planning for nutrition plans.
Amazing. We are so excited to be here with you. If you're just joining, we're having an awesome discussion in the chat about what we had for breakfast this morning. So you want to make sure you change your to all panelists and attendees so that each other can see what you're saying, and then both Avita and I can see what you're saying. This chat is going to stay lit up throughout this webinar. That is our goal for you. Really, what you put into this webinar is exactly what you're going to get out of it. So feel free to ask questions that pertain to the task at hand, which today we are covering all things evidence-based meal planning. And that's why we've got Avita here with us today. She is the resident expert when it comes to all things evidence, especially within That Clean Life. So today we're going to cover some best practices when it comes to creating evidence-based meal plans for your clients. And we're going to introduce you to a really exciting new feature inside of That Clean Life that allows you to create evidence-based meal plans much easier and include that evidence in your meal plans for your clients, as well as your recipe books, any resources as needed. You guys are making us so hungry in the chat. I love this. Amazing. I've got to screenshot this so that I've got ideas for days to come.
That's what I was thinking too, is just like write down all these ideas. They're so good.
Exactly. Wonderful. Well, thanks so much for joining us. I think the best part or the best way to get started here is probably just to jump right in and kick off with laying out some best practices. So Avita, did you want to tell us, maybe let's start with why evidence-based practices are so efficient?
Yeah, I'll start with like what is evidence-based practice, as some practitioners or health professionals, nutrition professionals in the chat or in this conversation might not be aware of. So if we think of the practice of evidence-based nutrition, I want you to think of it as three components. The first is it involves using the best available nutrition evidence. And then you're going to combine that with your clinical expertise as a nutrition professional or as a health professional, and use those two things together to work together with your clients' values and preferences to provide the best care possible. So optimal clinical decision-making requires awareness of that clinical evidence or that nutrition research, nutrition evidence that's out there. But that evidence alone is not sufficient enough to make a clinical decision. So as a practitioner, that's where your clinical expertise comes in. And as a decision maker, you would take that evidence and trade off its benefits with the risks, burden, costs associated for your client's unique situation to then create an evidence-based practice. So something, Tabitha, that you just asked was, why is creating evidence-based meal plans important, or why is it important to include evidence in your practice? I really think that implementing scientific evidence to support your nutrition plans and taking an evidence-based approach in your practice is really beneficial for you as the practitioner, as well as for your clients. So in order for nutrition professionals to stay competitive in both, in say, health, business, and education arenas, it really is imperative, it really is important to have an evidence-based approach in your day-to-day activities and in your decision-making. So thinking of benefits to you as the practitioner would be, it really enhances your credibility and it makes your practice more efficient, more effective. For myself, I find that it expands the practitioner's clinical expertise, the knowledge of medical conditions, knowledge of disease mechanisms, and pathophysiology. as you incorporate evidence into your practice, you'll find that your research skills will grow stronger because you will be searching for and retrieving some really good, high quality evidence. You will learn to critically appraise it, and then learning when and how to apply it in different clinical situations or scenarios. And what I find really important is using evidence in my practice helps me to stay up to date on the latest research findings and the latest information that's available. And it also benefits your clients hugely. So when your clients understand the reason and the rationale for the nutrition recommendations that you are providing them, or any health advice or dietary changes that you're recommending, when they understand the reason, it enables active and informed participation in their care. And they're more likely to follow through with their nutrition plan. They're more likely to have higher success outcomes for your clients. So thinking of like an example could be if you're telling your client, hey, eat more fiber to improve your heart health, they might have a whole bunch of other recommendations from their doctor, then other professionals, maybe family and friends, and they don't know why they need to do something. If you're saying, add 10 to 20 grams of soluble fiber because it helps lower your bad cholesterol, your LDL cholesterol, and you get it from these foods, they understand why, and then they're more likely to incorporate it in their day-to-day activities. And then they trust you, they find you more credible because there's reason to the suggestions you're making, and they trust the scientific process and the processes, and they begin to trust research out there, which is also, I think, hugely important because there's just so much misinformation and pseudoscience out there.
And it's always changing too, right? Like there's always studies going on, it's always updating. And that's why us as practitioners, we need to stay on top of this, and it makes us more credible as we stay on top of it.
Absolutely.
So how do you go about finding evidence to support your nutrition recommendations? Maybe you haven't dove into this world of scientific exploration in a while. Where does a practitioner start?
Absolutely. That's a great question. If you are new to finding research, finding evidence, and you don't know where to start, what makes something valid, what makes something credible, I would recommend to locate the best evidence if you're using any search websites like Google Chrome, PubMed, Cinel. So trying to limit your search to publication types with higher quality levels of evidence. So higher levels of quality evidence would be things like systematic reviews, meta-analyses, and nutrition practice guidelines. So these ones are your like top tier, what you want to look for right away. If the topic you're looking for is pretty niche or it's an emerging topic, those high quality levels of evidence might not exist. So then you can look at more like research studies that, for example, randomized controlled trials, cohort studies, case studies. You can even look for background information in nutrition textbooks, medical textbooks. A lot of professional organizations have good practice guidelines and information available on their websites. So you would go to that level. With lower levels of evidence, you just might need to do a bit more critical appraisal, a bit more digging to find what works best for your client. And you might need to use a couple more sources to really back up the evidence. Either way, whichever source you look for, like you had just mentioned, Tabitha, medical information, nutrition information, it becomes outdated quickly. There's always new information coming up. So try to aim to review the most recent information, the most recent evidence and research that's available. So what I like to do is when I'm looking for evidence is first narrowing down on my topic, the clinical question or the research question that I'm asking. And then usually there's a tab that says, how many years of research do you want? So limit it to the last 5 years. If you can't find your topic within those last 5 years, stretch it a bit more to 10 years and so on until you get enough evidence, but try to keep it as recent as possible.
Great. So you mentioned some of the ways that you can ensure you're finding relevant research. And, somebody Lisa asked in the chat, is healthline.com a credible source? So I think that gets back to the question of how do you know you're using good research versus just research that's out there?
Absolutely. That's a great question. So healthline.com, what they actually do, and websites like this, like WebMD, they will link their sources within their article. So always look for that too. If there's a claim being made with nothing to back it up, then you might have to question of where is this coming from, and maybe do a little bit of digging on your own to see if what that resource is saying is actually true and there's evidence to support that. But within these websites like Healthline and WebMD, you will also find their sources. Read through their sources. As you read through different research and sources, usually on one side of it, there's a section that says like other articles or research studies that have also referenced that. So you can sort of go deeper and deeper. You can get lost in a web of reading research. But you can absolutely find good sources of good research within other medical or nutrition-backed websites. But to ensure you are using good research, I would say the application of evidence-based practice, it's quite complex and can vary when discussing a topic with high level quality evidence versus an emerging topic. So when you're thinking of something that's well researched, that there's like, and you want to, for example, let's use diabetes and cardiovascular health as an example. These are well-researched topics. There's a lot of evidence that exists on them. There's systematic summaries. There's practice guidelines from, say, if you're in North America for diabetes, there's Diabetes Canada, there's the American Diabetes Association for cardiovascular guidelines, American Heart Association, the Canadian Cardiovascular Society. So these professional organizations have already critically analyzed and assessed the evidence, and they've packaged it really well for you to use. So if your topic you're looking for is something that's well researched, has a high quality evidence, go to these nutrition practice guidelines first. If it's an emerging topic, for example, your client wants to know, hey, I want to use this herbal preparation or this supplement for kidney stones because I heard it can reduce incidence of kidney stones. Should I use it? And maybe that supplement is fairly new. There's not a lot of research out there. So you're going to take these lower levels of evidence or these research studies that have been singled out, take them, along with using now your clinical judgment, your clinical expertise, understanding, okay, is this that supplement or herbal preparation, is the mechanism, does that make sense? Using anecdotal observations. So, I had a client who made many other clients who used it and they found it helpful. So using sort of like your clinical judgment, and then you can present, it's really important if you're using lower levels of evidence, like a couple of studies and maybe a couple of examples, that you present it as such. Mm-hmm. Being clear and transparent with your clients. If you are using varying levels of evidence, they will find you more trustworthy and more credible when you are honest in why you are making your clinical judgment. Whatever type of resource you use in the end, critically appraise it. So when we talk about critical appraisal for informing your clinical decision making, there's so much to ask when you're critically appraising a research study or an article, and a bit much to get into here, but definitely if you want to email us or pop in the chat, I can help to answer certain questions. But as a basis, I want you to think of critical appraisal in three ways. Validity can you trust this study? Impact, are the results clinically important? And applicability, is this applicable to your client or to my client? So after gathering evidence, critically appraising it, you will figure out when and how to use that evidence in your practice and with certain clients. While it might be like an ideal scenario that you find the most recent high quality evidence that perfectly fits your client's condition and picture, that's pretty rare. You will end up using varying levels of evidence and you will just learn to use your clinical judgment. And that's why you are the nutrition professional, the health professional, the practitioner. And that's what your client's really leaning on you for, is to use that judgment and help decipher these different research studies.
Totally. I know you mentioned earlier a few resources, but what are your personal go-to sources when compiling evidence for nutrition programs? I think
Absolutely.
everyone's eager to know.
Eager to know. Yeah. Okay. So I wrote a couple down. If you see me looking down, that's I'm reading off of them. I will start by saying depends on your topic.
Mhm.
So there's tons of journals that specialize in different topics. So gastroenterology, cardiovascular, renal disease. So you might need to get a bit more, you might need to look more into specific journals if that's something that you have a niche topic. But if you're starting out and you want some more broader websites to look at, so practice guidelines, start with the National Guideline Clearinghouse. It's a free web-based database of clinical guidelines. For other practice guidelines, look at professional organizations. They provide high quality practice guidelines. So ones that I mentioned were like in North America was for diabetes and cardiovascular guidelines. So find a professional organization for the country that you reside in, and then just look at the specific condition that you want. There's tons of professional organizations out there, and they will package it really well. So start there for practice guidelines. If you want to look at evidence-based journals, so some are available by subscription. I won't go into those because those are paid. So if you're looking for a free website, start with PubMed. It's easily available. There's free access to the National Library of Medicine's Medline database, and they provide something like 2.4 million free journal articles. So start there. Since nutrition is such an interdisciplinary field, clinical questions might also be best answered by searching other databases. So looking at natural medicines, comprehensive database, and Sports Discuss. Also point of care information products. So if you're not familiar with those, they're defined as sort of like, think of like electronic bedside information products that really provide like summarized medical information and they're meant to be used by healthcare professionals. So at the hospital I work at, we use UpToDate. Other ones include First Consult, ACP Peer, Dynamed, and Clinical Evidence. So there's tons of resources out there. Start with these if you're new to finding evidence to support your practice.
Perfect. And I will put those in the replay email as well. So don't worry about if you miss some of those. I'll go back to Avita and make sure we've got a nice summarization of those. I feel like Catherine's kind of reading our mind on this conversation. And she's like, I sometimes feel when I go to my clients and I'm like, the evidence states, and you kind of like lose them, right? So
Yeah.
I'm wondering if you've got any tips for how to translate evidence and present it to clients in a way that is like, quote unquote, easier for them to understand, and you don't lose them in your sort of practitioner speak.
Absolutely. Evidence can be kind of boring if you present it in the wrong way. So, and there's just two sides of it. You want it to still be evidence-based, scientifically proven, but you want to present it in a way that's relatable to your client. So, translating nutrition research involves really like speaking and writing more plainly to help your clients understand a complex scientific topic. So when your client understands the messages they receive about their health, they're more likely to follow through with their behavior changes, lifestyle changes, nutrition recommendations, their nutrition or meal plans. So if you're just getting started with knowledge translation, I would say first things first, conduct a assessment for your client's needs. So conducting your meal planning assessment, which should be a given, but also 3 key things to really dig into: your client's health literacy, their culture, and the language that they would like to be provided, the nutrition communication.
Mm-hmm.
When I say health literacy, so something that you had said, Dev, was, like being boring of like evidence says that this, is your client just wants to know the information and why. So understanding the health literacy level. So some clients are going to come to you having done so much research on the topic. Maybe they work in healthcare and they understand disease mechanisms, the pathophysiology, they understand their medical condition. And so they want really detailed, complex information provided. So that's where you can go into more depth. with a client who is feeling overwhelmed. Maybe they were just diagnosed with diabetes and they really just want like the simple information. So keep it simple, jargon-free, define technical terms. And provide that evidence in a way that they will be easy, that's easy to understand. And then taking into consideration someone's culture. So, looking at the research, who was the population that the research was conducted on? Does the research apply to your clients, not just for cultural foods, also their practices, whether it's religious or traditional practices, their beliefs, their values. An example is if you have a client who's, let's say the client who's just diagnosed with diabetes, and maybe they're Islamic and they follow it's Ramadan. So they don't eat during the day, they're fasting during the day. And now you as a practitioner are coming in saying, eat regular meals, 4 to 6 hours, include a carbohydrate at every meal, eat throughout the day. So they as a client feel now they have to follow this, and it doesn't align with their beliefs, and they have to separate their culture in order to follow the nutrition guidelines. So that can get risky, dangerous, and you break that relationship. And then evidence is really useless because you didn't actually help the client. So thinking of your client's culture, and there's tons of research out there on, for example, following a diabetes plan for different cultures. There's resources with different cultural foods. There's resources for following, managing blood glucose control during Ramadan or during fasting periods for different cultural groups and diverse backgrounds. So looking at those, so evidence exists. It's up to you as the practitioner to find the right evidence to support your client. And then I mentioned language. So just because your client speaks the same language as you does not mean that they understand it fully or read it or write it. For example, let's use English. So I have tons of clients who speak English fluently but don't read or write it, and prefer to have the nutrition information or any medical information, scientific information provided in the language of their preference, language that they communicate more effectively in. So scientific terms don't always translate very well into other languages. So making sure that you ask these questions, even if someone's speaking to you in fluent English, asking, what language would you like your resources provided in? And then that affects the setting that you provide information for your knowledge translation. So asking your client, hey, do you want to do individual? Would you like someone there to help you translate, interpret, or just support you? Do you like group programs? And going back to how you present this information. So now you've considered literacy, their needs, their culture, their language. How are you going to present it to them? Take into consideration their learning style. So asking these questions in your assessment, are they an auditory learner, visual learner, kinesthetic? Like if you say something to me, I'm probably going to forget it. Maybe it needs to be a visual resource. So thinking, and visual does not mean a paper handout. It can be a video. It can be a graphic. We have so many different resources out there to create very interesting, cool graphics. Use those, use pictures. So they always say the reason, the rationale, the why, so that they are empowered. So when you're not there to coach them, they can say, going back to soluble fiber. Why do I need to have soluble fiber? Oh yes, because of this. My nutrition practitioner told me this, and I can. That's why I should implement it. So going back to that, to the why, and making sure that the platform you're providing that information is good and useful for your client. So keeping it clear and concise, limiting the number of messages taught at one time. Again, going back to simple, clear messaging, defining technical terms, keeping it jargon-free. And last, but most important, make it applicable. So don't just spew off evidence and research that's not applicable to your client. They're going to feel very overwhelmed. So give your clients realistic and tangible options for making dietary changes by providing health-related goal, rationale, and method to implement. For example, incorporate physical activity every day by doing 30 to 60 minutes of physical activity, which is walking, because this will help lower your LDL or your bad cholesterol. So they understand why. I hope that answers it.
Totally. Yeah. It's putting tangible evidence to what you've collected through your meal planning assessment tool with them. So applying it to what you already know about their life. And if you don't know, then you just need to ask those questions. So that was
Absolutely.
great. Thank you so much for that. That was super thorough. I think the next step we should probably do is dive into the platforms that we can really show this in action and how
Yeah.
everyone can use this in their own practice. So I'm going to share my screen. Do you just want to let me know when you can see it?
Yes, looks good.
All right, perfect. So for those of you who are, what I want to know what stuck most with you about anything that Avita laid out. What was the one point that really stuck with you and that you're going to drive into your practice moving forward, whether that even just means understanding how to apply that more to your practice, or if that means completely revamping everything that you're doing right now and applying it in a way that feels good to you. So what was the one point that really stuck around with you? And if you want to drop that in the chat. Also, keep in mind, if you've got any questions, feel free to drop those in the chat. We'll get to those as soon as we can. And we're going to have a Q&A at the end of this. So as long as they're relevant to this evidence-based platform and incorporation that we're showing you, we are more than happy to go through them. Yes, making evidence relevant. I totally hear that, Deborah. That is exactly what resonated with me as well. Health literacy. Yes. Okay. Amazing. I love this. Cultural practices. Hey, Abby. Abby's at home recovering. So wonderful. Thank you. Okay. This is great. This is great. Everyone, thank you so much. So for those of you who aren't with That Clean Life, I do want to make sure that you know that we're not just an evidence-based platform. We are a meal planning platform. We allow you to create easy meal plans that are simple and fun for your clients. Resources of any kind, really. You can create recipe books, meal planning guides, but basically we are a meal planning tool for health professionals. And you'll see here, basically, our recipes tab is like a living, breathing cookbook. So all of these recipes here are created by our really, really wonderful in-house team of our recipe developers. Wow, that totally escaped me for a moment. So our recipe developers are just like you and I. They create their recipes in their in-home kitchen. There is no commercial test kitchen here. They are just like you and your clients. And really what we want to take time to profile here is the evidence-based nutrition that we've associated with our program. So That Clean Life gives you the ability to create your own custom meal plans. You don't need to use our programs. Our programs are really just a template, almost like a jumping off point for you to start and then modify as needed for your clients. They really start to, they create a launch point, really. So it helps you get a little bit of work done without completely starting from scratch, as long as it matches your client's food philosophy as well as your own. And so really, there's honestly something for everyone inside of our programs. As I mentioned, these are all pre-made. They all solve some sort of a problem. And in order to understand more about our programs, you can always just click on the name. And there's always an overview associated with the program. So it tells you why we created this program, what principles it was based on. It also shows the tags. So this is how the recipes are qualified. So if they're autoimmune, if they're egg-free, if they're dairy-free, if they're gluten-free. And you can also scroll down to see all of the recipes that are included inside of this platform. Ooh, Shannon has a great question. How often are recipes added? That is something I should have touched on. We add new recipes weekly. We are always focused on an ever-growing database so that we can meet all of our members' needs. And then you'll notice that recently we've been working really hard behind the scenes to implement this evidence-based tab on most of our programs. And this evidence-based tab tells you exactly what was considered when we built this program. So there's a couple of different ways that this shows up. So for example, this program was created with the following key considerations. So things like anti-inflammatory foods, gut health, hormone regulation, immune support, and anything that is underlined here takes you to the paper that we were referencing. So you can see exactly where we got that research and why we relied on that when building that meal plan or that program. So that's key considerations. And then there's programs that also take into account key nutrients. So for example, this plant-based menopause support program, we focused with 5 key nutrients in mind. So specifically calcium and magnesium, phytoestrogens, low glycemic food, protein, and healthy fats. So we've done the work for you on all of our programs. And you really want to keep in mind that we've done the work for the evidence. And while you might not use the meal plan exactly as is, you have evidence-based pieces in here that you can rely on. So you can head to these programs, you can see where Avita found these resources and really start your launch point from there. So if what we were talking about before feels like a very hard starting point, this is a really great starting point. And you can kind of take 1 or 2 of the key nutrients and you have the ability to filter for those nutrients as needed. So if I pop back into recipes for just 1 moment, in order to find what you're looking for, we have a filter button. And so if you know that calcium is important to you, you can head over to nutrition and you can find recipes that are high in calcium. And in that way, you're finding things that support you, you're finding recipes that support your evidence and you're building something that works specifically for your client. So this is whether you're building from scratch or whether you just need to swap things out for the meal plan, any way, shape, or form. So there's a number of ways that you can filter recipes, but I did want to highlight that for just a moment because you can lean on these key nutrients as needed to find other recipes that work best for you. Now, in my opinion, the coolest part about this evidence is that you can actually package it up and make it tangible for your client. So we've given you the ability to create a snippet. So I think I'm going to start actually with the menopause support program, and I'll just walk you through what this looks like. So as we can see here, if we click on the evidence tab, we've got 5 key nutrients that we're focusing on. And if we want to package up all of this information and include it in our meal planning package for our client, we're just going to click on these 3 dots, add as a snippet. And then this is creating a snippet of that exact information that you just saw under the evidence tab. So we would go ahead and save that. Whenever you create a snippet, it's always saved under your snippets, which can be found under your profile. So this is really cool because you can dig into where your snippets are. You can edit them as needed. So if something didn't feel right about the wording here, you can totally change it. If you wanted to say this program was created for you or put their name in it, you can totally do that as well. And then how that applies to sending this over to your client, well, first we need to view this planner. So this meal plan, excuse me. So if we click on view, we can now see this as the 7-day layout. So all of whether you're building a meal plan from scratch or looking at a program, our programs always have a caloric and macronutrient as well as micronutrient breakout at the top. And you can always view this also as a pie chart. And all of the recipes you can see are laid out here. You'll notice that some things are grayed out. And this is where leftovers come into play. So we're really big fans of leftovers here. We feel that it makes it most approachable for your clients in the kitchen so that they're not making something fresh at every single meal. So for example, this coconut chia yogurt, they make it once on Monday, they enjoy it through Thursday, making things nice and easy for them. And then once you're ready to send this off to your client, you can go ahead and export. And since I already created that little snippet, then we can also include that in our package. So you'll notice that we've got our meal plan, our grocery list, which is auto-generated. And then we also have some notes that are really handy for your client if they need to make any swaps within the recipe. You can always choose to exclude any of these items here. And then you can choose a cover page. So you want to choose anything that drops down here. All of the photos are nice and appetizing. And then under brief is where you'll include the snippet. So snippets are, you can obviously type out anything that you need here, but I do want to point out that if you head to view all, we have something called My Snippets, and you can see that menopause support program evidence that I just saved is at the top. But if you head over to templates, we also have some templates for how to introduce your clients to their resources. So for example, meal plan and guide introduction. This one that we're specifically doing is a meal plan introduction. So I'm going to apply that. And then if we head down to the bottom, we can also apply that snippet just by going back to view all, and you can apply that snippet that was just there. And what I really want to point out here is that anything that is underlined is a hyperlink. So your client can access the exact same resources that you did if that's of interest to them. If not, you can always choose to exclude those, but this is just such a great way to link to your evidence as needed. And you can create your own hyperlink. So if you wanted to highlight your own evidence-based tab, you just highlight anything that you need to create a hyperlink, and then you just click on this hyperlink here and you add it just like you would in an email. All right, so if we were to export, this is what it would look like. So we've got our cover page with our branding as needed. We've got our name, so our menopause support program. And anything that has a hyperlink in front of it or is underlined is completely clickable. So like I said, your client can click from right inside this and be taken to the actual study. So you'll notice that everything is nicely formatted right inside of that layout, and your brief is containing all of the information that they need to know. Once again, your brief can be as long or as short as you need it to be. So whatever is appropriate for your client and whatever you feel is going to make them the most successful. And then you've got your meal plan layout. I'm using the modern theme here. So all of the meal plan has complete photos with it. You've got your grocery list, which you did not have to compile at all. That is done for you as you add the recipes. Anyone here who has meal planned by hand, you know how painful that can be. And then you roll right into the recipes. So it's got the exact number of servings that they need, the number of ingredients that they need, and everything laid out exactly as needed. And what I did want to point out, I know that we're quite short on time here, but for those of you that have clients where meal planning just doesn't fit for them, but you still want them to be empowered by the knowledge you're giving them, you can use all of this to create a recipe book just the same. So if you're inside of programs, you find what works best for your client, maybe something like the bone health support program. And you can view, you don't even need to add it to a collection. So you can click on view, just like you did for the other meal plan. But when you export, just be sure to remove the plan and remove the list. So you would deselect both of these, and that's just going to compile a resource of recipes. And you can do the same thing with your snippet, where you would create that bone health evidence snippet before coming into this area here. And then you just export, and it creates essentially this. So I did this all beforehand, so you don't have to wait to export. But we've got our bone health support recipe book. We've got our snippet that specifically relates to bone health, so 5 key nutrients in mind. And then instead of it being laid out day by day, they've got all of the recipes that they need as needed, and they can choose to implement this on whatever day of the week works best for them. Okay, I think I hit on everything in the platform there, but I did want to make sure that we've got time for Q&As, because I did say that we were going to answer your questions. So how are we doing for questions?
Shannon, I hope that answers your questions, that those hyperlinks within the PDF are all accessible by your client if you send it to them as an email. We've got a lot of questions.
Yes, sorry, I'm trying to scroll up and I'm trying to get right to where they are. Simone, I'm so glad that you're getting so much value out of the snippets. That's great. Same with Sarah. This is like one of my favorite editions we've done in a long time. So I'm so glad to hear that you guys are enjoying that too. Barbara, it sounds like you're having some issues with formatting. If you just want to send your question over to support@thatcleanlife.com, you can send an example of what you're seeing, because we really need to understand what you're seeing on your end in order to troubleshoot it. So send over your export and we can dig into that for you. Sharon, yes, the recipe servings can always be changed. So you can simply just drag them up or down as needed. If you wanted them to eat, you first have to make a copy in order to make any changes to a program. But if you wanted more than servings can be changed as needed. So this is how you change the servings, just by sliding. But if you want them to eat more than one serving in a sitting, that's called a portion. So for example, this Greek yogurt has 2 servings where they have 1 portion on one day, 1 portion on the next day. But if you wanted them to have 2 portions in one sitting, you would just change your portion. If you need more clarification on that, feel free to email us and we can go over that in support@thatcleanlife.com. You can totally add your own recipes and photos. You need to do so within your recipe box. So you can import recipes if that feels good. You can also add by hand, whatever works most for you. I know Leslie asked, how do you get the photos on the 7-day meal plan? I changed my theme. So if you head up to your name and you click on preferences, your export theme. So I'm using modern here, and that's how I got the photos. Classic will result in no photos, and bold results in a non-grid layout.
To Shelley, the serving sizes definitely adjusts for leftovers, and that would affect the grocery list as well.
All right, perfect. Okay, so I think if we're not getting to your questions, like I think we have a few UK members here who are having troubles with their measurements, feel free to email me. I don't want you to feel frustrated by that. That's exactly why I'm here. So support@thatcleanlife.com, and we'll be sure to get you a detailed answer more than we can on this webinar. But before we let you go, I do want to let you know that if you guys are That Clean Life members already, you are good to get started. So you can log in today. Evidence is there waiting for you. Feel free to capitalize on everything that we showed you today. And if you're not a That Clean Life member, you can go to thatcleanlife.com/pricing. And you'll notice that the pricing here is available either to pay monthly, or if you just click this button, you can pay yearly. And when you pay yearly, you end up saving $120. So that equates to 2 months free. And you also get enrolled in our Nutrition Business Growth Accelerator. And so you can find out more. I'll just drop this link in here about the Nutrition Business Growth Accelerator. But basically, it is a 3-week email course that allows you to really amp up your business. If you're just getting started, this is totally for you. It's really a wonderful, wonderful class that helps you get started and really take action. So if you are somebody that signs up for something and doesn't take action right away, then this might be exactly what you're looking for. And I did want to point out that Avita had mentioned we were talking about a meal planning assessment tool. So you don't need to be a member to access our meal planning assessment tool. You can do that right from our website, and it is available as a PDF that you can even implement inside of your website as a PDF that you send to your clients right inside of your EHR software. It's very, very easy to implement and change those questions and really hone in on what it is that you're trying to find out about your clients. So feel free to lean on us for that tool, and that will be super, super easy. Nikki, you can totally upgrade down the road. If you want to sign up for a month to get your feet wet and see if that works for you, then feel free to do that. And you can upgrade down the road. And the minimum sign up time would be the monthly plan. So you sign up for 1 month. When you sign up for monthly or yearly, they renew automatically, just like when you sign up for Netflix, it renews automatically, just so that you don't lose interruption, or so you don't lose service access. All right, I think that's it for us. We've taken up a lot of your time, but the great news is that we have recorded everything here. So if there was something that just didn't stick with you and you wanted to go back and revisit it, I will be sending out that replay later on today. And I will ensure that I include a list of the resources that Avita went through too, that so many of you were asking about. We also wanted to thank everyone for taking time to join us live here today. Thank you so much. It means the world when you come out and participate in these. And we really love to hear that these things that we're implementing on your end are making you guys, all of you, better nutrition practitioners, better health experts, and really just helping your clients excel and shine. So from Avita and I, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And we'll see you soon.